They said we were the reward, like silver coins or a new horse, handed over to the man who finished the job. Out here in the Wild West, lives were traded with the same cold breath used to bargain cattle. I remember the sun burning the prairie that day, the grass dry and sharp against my torn dress, the taste of dust and blood in my mouth. We had been running for days. My sister, the other women, and me after the raid that took everything. Our names didn't matter anymore. Survival did. When the rancher first rode in, I didn't see a savior. I saw another man with a gun, another shadow standing between us and mercy. He dismounted slowly, eyes scanning the scene. The wounded girl on the ground, the bruises, the fear we couldn't hide. The men who brought us there laughed, already counting their reward. "Take them," one said, nudging us forward like livestock. "Payment for your help." My hands shook as I waited for his answer. In those seconds, a lifetime passed. I expected hunger in his eyes, or cruelty, or indifference. That's what the West taught us to expect. But something else flickered there: conflict. He looked at us, really looked, not as prizes, but as people. Still, the rules of this land were heavy, and silence can be as cruel as words. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, steady, and dangerous in a way I didn't understand yet. He didn't refuse outright. He didn't accept either. He asked questions. Who hurt us? Where were we from? Why were we bleeding? The men shifted uneasily. They weren't used to explaining themselves. I realized then that this rancher wasn't like the others, but I didn't dare hope. Hope had gotten too many killed. As he knelt beside the wounded girl and checked her breathing, I saw his jaw tighten. The prairie wind carried the smell of iron and injustice. That was the moment everything began to change, though none of us knew it yet. If you want to know how one decision can shatter the cruelty of an entire system, stay with this story, and don't forget to subscribe, because stories like this deserve to be remembered. The men argued with him, voices rising like vultures fighting over scraps. They said a deal was a deal. They said the West didn't run on kindness. I stood there, heart pounding, watching the rancher rise slowly to his feet. He was outnumbered, but he didn't look afraid. He told them to leave. Not shouted, told. Calm final. When they laughed, he placed his hand near his holster. Not threatening, just ready. The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. In that pause, I understood something powerful. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply refuses to step aside. The men backed down, cursing, spitting into the dirt, promising trouble. When they rode away, the prairie felt different, like it had exhaled. But danger doesn't disappear that easily. The rancher turned to us and said we weren't his reward. We were under his protection. Those words cracked something inside me. Protection was a luxury we had never known. He helped us to his ranch, slow and careful with the wounded girl, giving water, tearing clean cloth for bandages. He didn't touch us without asking. He didn't look at us like we owed him. At the ranch, he gave us food, warm blankets, and space. Still, fear stayed close. Kindness in the West often came with a hidden price. Days passed. The girl healed. We worked because we wanted to, not because we were forced. He paid us fairly, like hired hands, not property. But rumors travel fast. Men came asking questions, hinting that we belonged to someone else. Each time the rancher stood firm. They belonged to themselves, he said. That sentence was more powerful than any gunshot. The threats escalated. One night, shots rang out near the barn. We hid, shaking, convinced the world was about to take its due. Instead, the rancher stood his ground again, defending not just us but an idea that people are not prizes. Watching him risk everything for that belief changed how I saw myself. I wasn't a reward. I wasn't broken goods. I was human. And that realization was more frightening and freeing than anything I had known. If this part of the story moves you, subscribe now, because what comes next proves that real change always demands a price. The final test came at dawn when the men returned in force, armed and angry. They wanted what they believed was theirs. The rancher stood alone at the fence, sun rising behind him, dust swirling like the ghosts of old laws. We watched from the porch, hearts in our throats, knowing that if he fell, we'd be dragged back into darkness. He didn't beg. He didn't bargain. He told them the truth, that the world only stays cruel because good men step aside. Guns were raised. Time slowed. Then something unexpected happened. The sheriff rode in, drawn by the noise, by the rumors, by the rancher's refusal to play along. The men tried to twist the story, but lies don't hold up well in daylight. The sheriff listened to us. For the first time, our voices mattered. The men were taken away, the threat dissolved not by violence, but by standing firm long enough for justice to arrive. When the dust settled, the rancher didn't celebrate. He just leaned on the fence, exhausted. We walked out to him, no longer afraid to stand in the open. He told us we were free to leave or stay, to choose our own path. Freedom, a word so simple, so heavy. Some of us left to find family, others stayed to build something new. I stayed long enough to learn who I was without chains, visible or invisible. The West didn't change overnight, but one ranch became proof that it could be different. Years later, when I think back to the day we were called a reward, I realize how close we came to disappearing into someone else's story. Instead, we became our own. And it all started with one man who chose humanity over tradition. If this story reminded you that change begins with choice, help us keep these stories alive, subscribe to the channel, share it, and stand with voices that refuse to be silenced.